Vedran will talk a bit about dirty secrets of selling to enterprise SaaS and what he's learned. Welcome.
Thank you, thank you. Cool, let me just figure out everything's working. Is the clicker working? Nice, okay. So it's nice to see a room full of salespeople, or at least people who are aiming to be in sales. I really, congrats to Leo and the team for bringing a full room in Zagreb here. I know it wasn't easy. And I know we're all probably going to talk about the same thing, but hopefully you get something interesting out of this. I'm already having fun because most of the people here actually want to talk to you instead of some of the conferences that we visit. Usually people tend to avoid eye contact at all costs and like don't want to speak to you or don't want to be sold at. So this is quite amazing. The topic is dirty secrets of selling enterprise software or SaaS. This is something that is near and dear to my heart at the moment, but definitely not something I would say I enjoy doing. But we'll get into that. Before we do, let's first start off with a brief intro. My background, I'm currently the founder and CEO of Treblle. I'm an engineer at heart, so definitely a real engineer. I have more than 13 years of experience with IT, usually with development. So I used to started out as a developer, then I ran my previous company for the past 10 years, and I'm running Treblle. I'm really passionate, as you might guess, about three things: APIs, IPAs, and barbecue. And sometimes in that exact order, sometimes in some other orders, but generally those are the things that I really prefer. One thing that I'm definitely not is I am not a sales guy. So whatever I say here, you should kind of take it with a grain of, or a pinch of salt. And what I'm going to tell you is basically just 5 anecdotes from the past 3 years that we've been selling software to primarily customers in the US. So what does actually Treblle do? Or the better question is, what is it that we are trying to sell? So we're essentially an end-to-end API ops platform. Now again, if you're in sales, that really doesn't mean anything. So translation, we help organizations figure things out on their APIs. We've got a suite of different products, everything from observability, security, governance, analytics, documentation. It's a bunch of complicated words intentionally, but essentially, if you've got an API, we can help you become a better API organization, if you will. We started in July 2021, and so far we raised 8.4 million in capital across 2 funding rounds from US and UK-based investors. And originally, fun fact, we actually started by our kind of a go-to-market approach was bottom-up, but we quickly we switched to top-down in the last, I would say, 1 year. So everything that I'm about to tell you is pretty fresh in my mind. So how are things going so far? Just from a growth perspective, in those 3 years, literally we're going to have a birthday, I think, in like 10 days or something like that. We've got 100,000 users. We have 12,000 different APIs. And we process roughly 1.4 billion API requests per month. Largely, all of that, at least the number of requests, has grown in the last 6 months, and primarily due to a lot of the deals that we've been able to close. So who do we sell to? That's also quite important for context. So we tend to sell to API-first and API-focused companies. Now, again, that is a very long description. But essentially, if you're building an API and API is important to you as a business, or you're selling an API, you're our customer. We started, like I've mentioned, as a bottom-up go-to-market notion. And one thing that we realized is too many people avoided eye contact. So we switched to decision makers and essentially larger companies who actually have some of these problems that we're solving. Our primary focus, literally, I would say 90% is US, UK, and then we have some sprinkles around Europe. I am proud that we have a couple of companies from Croatia that are using us. So always a shout out to them, companies like Elevian, D-Term, and similar who kind of recognize this and are actually using this in their products. So kudos to them. Now, who are some of our customers and clients at the moment? So we've got a lot of banking, communication, and tech sectors. Axis Bank, Atlassian, currently our biggest customer. Zillow, Discover, that's a recent close. Telstra, Australian Telecom. Verizon, one of the biggest US telecoms. And a recent addition is Zurich Insurance. I know that name might not mean anything to you, but whenever you buy insurance, this is actually the API that does that for you and make sure when you're traveling to make you safe. So what have we kind of noticed when we were doing sales? And again, since I don't have a background in sales, maybe some of these things you're going to know. But a lot of these things, I had no idea that it was so dirty. And it's, sometimes it's so frustrating that it's funny. So rather than cry about it, we decided to put it in a presentation and have some fun. So the first kind of dirty secret that I've noticed is there's this, if you're selling to really large enterprises, like we're talking tens of thousands of people in the US, you'll often run into a bunch of middlemen. Now, these middlemen can be very, very famous logos or not so famous logos. So you've got a bunch of analysts and researchers and different companies who essentially advise those companies on what software to buy. So these guys, I don't want to say their name because I don't want to get sued in case they don't like something. These guys, that's what we're going to call them, have the best business model in the world, right? So what they do is they come to a really large org and they tell them, hey, let us advise you. The software world is very complicated. Let us help you navigate that world, and essentially for a fee. So you pay, the enterprises pay them, and they advise them on what software to buy, how to structure their organizations. But on the other hand, the same guys then come to you as a vendor and tell you, hey, we're advising a bunch of these guys. We know, what they're buying or what they want to buy. We know you're selling. Why don't you kind of work with us and we'll help you navigate this entire process? And of course, that has a price. I don't want to disclose prices. But again, it starts roughly from 50K and onwards. But essentially, you get their advice. And essentially, the biggest problem in the world or biggest secret that I didn't know, and we'll get into the why do these guys succeed. Every single enterprise company that we've kind of talked to in the last, I would say, 6 months is actually using one of them. We've been in multiple deals where we ran through the process, we talked to the decision makers, we talked to the entire company, excellence teams, governance teams, CISOs, CIOs, and at the end of that, it's always the same. Hey, we really like this, but can we bring in somebody, some of these logos to help us evaluate you? And this is where you essentially get to work with these guys as well. So when you're working with these enterprises, be ready to work with these middlemen. I was at first very pissed, but now it's just one of those things that happens in life, and they got to most of these companies before you, so we can't complain. The second one, and this name always reminds me of a TV show called Ray Donovan, is called The Fixers. So these guys are quite similar to the previous guys, but they're actually more useful, right? So I have a lawyer here in Croatia. He's a very young guy. I really like him. And I usually call him like, hey, Jan, I need somebody for accounting, or I need somebody for that. And he's like, I know a guy. So I would say that is the equivalent. These fixers are the equivalent of I know a guy who knows a guy. And basically, it's a bunch of companies. I didn't put all of them, but actually SageTap is a software as a service that provides this as a service, whereas some other companies like Ridgetop, you actually have to be a member of the club or whatever in order for them to use their services. But what they do is fascinating. So they do warm intros to generally any leader or C-level executive in most companies in the world. And I shit you not, any name you give them, they'll just give them like a week and they'll come up with the contact. It's actually quite simple and transparent. You pay them $1,000 per intro, and that's it. You don't have to worry about it. I know it sounds like, at first I was like $1,000 for a meeting, but when you think about it, if you have to do marketing, if you have to target that company on LinkedIn, if you have to like do a bunch of different things, that's 10 times more expensive than what these guys charge. And again, we've been using some of these services. I can actually tell you a story. We were, I think, September of last year in London. We meet with this guy. Again, I'm really sorry I can't name specific companies, but they run a really big insurance company, whatever. The guy tells us this is an amazing product, blah, blah, blah. We need it. We want it. He tells us how to navigate the onboarding process. He tells us how does everything look like. We're like, great. We come home. The guy doesn't pick up his email for like 6 months, doesn't answer our calls, doesn't text, doesn't do anything, right? So we're super pissed, but we're not giving up. We ring one of these providers, and literally within 3 days, we're on the call with that same guy, and he's like, yeah, sorry, I was avoiding you, but here we are. We are doing business with them, but it is a very, very harsh world out there, or at least pay-to-play world. Now, I think Mattia before me said the word trust, and I'm going to talk about that coincidentally. I'm actually glad that she said something similar to me, because that means that maybe sometimes I'm right. But another word for trust that I would use when you're dealing with these enterprises is actually risk aversion, because that's one of the dirty secrets that I didn't know we had to do. Basically, diversify risk, and I think Mattia correctly said that. If you take any big enterprise company, everybody complains about how slow it is, everybody complains how horrible it is, everybody complains about the bureaucracy, but yet again, absolutely nobody in those companies wants to get fired for choosing the wrong piece of software. And most of these employees actually want to live the George Costanza lifestyle, which is, I have my own office, people don't exactly know what I do, but sometimes I make a decision, and I love for that decision to be amazing, and, I'm the best guy. Now we get back to why the middleman guys exist, because that's how most people in enterprise companies get to make decisions without any consequences. So if I'm the VP of engineering in a really huge, or CIO or CTO in a really huge enterprise, I'm like, hey, I want to use the microservice architecture. I want to build everything on top of APIs. I need a couple of vendors. I'm just going to go call somebody from the previous slide, and I'm going to let them create like a 30-page presentation that I'm going to say, hey, this is what they told me I should do. So if something goes wrong, I'm not going to get fired. But if it's really great, everybody's going to clap and say, hey, Vedran, you're the best guy in the world, right? So to these guys, it's all about kind of de-risking, and it's all about process and safety rather than product and innovation. And that's personally, to me, has been, I would say, the most painful lesson was you can have the best product in the world, like literally you can change lives, like literally you can cure AIDS or whatever you want. Nobody cares. Literally, you're not going to get into a conversation with a lot of these guys. They just don't care. They don't care how good it is. They don't care how amazing it is. All they care is, can they use you without any risk? If so, then maybe they will. That's about it. Number 4, pain and fear. Again, all of these are closely related. But essentially, one thing, as we've kind of spent a lot of time researching how do other organizations sell software, I had the opportunity to speak with a lot of software providers, with their sales teams, with their VCs, with their whatever. Basically, it boils down to 2 things. Most organizations and you use today when it comes to software either sell on pain or fear. There's nothing else that literally matters. There's nothing else that you can sell on. It's either pain or fear. Fear is pretty simple, right? Sometimes some organizations, you know what everybody's afraid of: leaking data, getting sued, et cetera, et cetera. So if you can essentially package and present the product in a way that, you know, kind of works along that fear, it doesn't actually mean that you can help, but actually, you know, kind of plays around that fear, you're going to be successful. The second one is, of course, pain. Now, we all want to solve pains, which is probably what every company here wants to do, including us. But it turns out, when I was creating Treblle and, you know, thinking about this, I forgot that there are actually two types of pain, right? There's an individual's pain, and there's an organizational pain. And what's even more interesting is this individual guy doesn't care about his organization or generally what kind of pain they have. So if we go into organization, and let's say we talk to an engineering manager and tell them, hey, we can save, I don't know, $50K a year on this or that, or we can help the organization be productive or better or streamlined, that guy is going to say, I don't care. Like, everything's okay. I'm perfectly fine the way I am. That's not something that I'm interested in. And that's it. That's the end of the conversation for you. So you got to essentially customize the pain for some of these guys, especially if it's like lower level. You know, a lot of them, you wouldn't believe like the types of situations that we had. Like, we had a guy that, you know, said, I'm oftentimes late because I have to stay late to debug APIs. And I have a group of friends who I play poker and barbecue after work, and sometimes I'm late, right? So his pain wasn't saving money, it's that he's late to a poker game after work, drinking with his buddies. So that's ridiculous, but you have to navigate around that. We've actually been in multiple scenarios where, you know, we start from the top, we get to a decision maker, he bumps us down to somebody who's supposed to execute that, and then everything stops because that guy simply doesn't see the pain that we're selling or doesn't feel it day to day. An even funnier situation where I got even more frustrated about this is we've heard companies who are spending anywhere from $250,000 to $1 million on month on things like observability using competitors. And we would go into these meetings and be like, hey, you're spending $250K a month. We can give you a better product at a lower price. And the guy's like, I don't care. I have a budget. Like, the budget's been approved. Like, I really don't care. So if you're selling to the wrong person, the wrong kind of pain or the wrong kind of fear, you're essentially not going to succeed, if you will. The next and the last one is probably, I think, the most difficult one to crack, but unfortunately, not even a secret, I would say. The number one question that we get every time we try to sell to enterprise companies is, who else is using you? So essentially, this is such a tricky question because if you're selling to US enterprise companies, they only care about this list. There is no other company in the world that they care about. Like, if you don't tell them a name from this list, you basically don't exist, right? So if let's say somebody asks me who else is using you, I tell them the Croatian telecom, they're going to be like, nice, and never get back to me. Basically, for American companies, this is the benchmark. That's what they use. That's where the answer should come from. So essentially, your biggest problem, the real, I would say, 0 to 1 problem for a lot of these companies like Treblle, and I'm assuming for a lot of you here, is to basically find that one company and that one person who's willing to take a leap of faith on you and the company to give you that reference or give you that name. Now, for us, not very early on, but we've had some luck with, for example, Atlassian. We find a very motivated, hungry guy there that actually had the decision-making powers. They needed the product to basically start a POC with us. And that actually helps us a lot when we go into other conversations. And it simply unlocks doors that there's no way like you would otherwise have. And again, the best thing, everybody's going to say, you can fake it, you can say a name, whatever. I've been at a call yesterday with a big bank. We told them, hey, we're working with another big bank. We give them the name of the bank, and the guy is like, who are you working there with? We tell him the name. He's like, yeah, I know him. Basically, you can't lie. They all know each other. They all talk about the same software. They all buy the same software. They all like to be very competitive. They all like to have an advantage. And if you think you're an advantage, that's essentially when you have an in. So for us, the biggest problem was getting to that, I would say, one customer that's willing to be named and willing to maybe do even a reference call or something like that. One other thing that we've noticed is a lot of the times, let's say I'm selling to a bank, the bank doesn't want to hear a telecom. They want to hear another bank. Why? Because most of these industries are sometimes very tight-knit, very regulated, and they're afraid to go outside of their comfort zone. So I don't know. Again, it comes back to getting fired and de-risking. If I know somebody in another bank that's using your piece of software, for me, that is de-risking this situation and essentially saying, hey, these guys are using them. They must be doing something right. So again, it's extremely hard sometimes to knock that first one. I think probably 90% of our efforts went into that, and it gets easier the more clients you get from a specific industry that you want to sell to the most. I think we've got around 12 more minutes, so from my side, I'm going to give you the opportunity to get some lunch earlier, but thanks for listening. I really appreciate the time here, and again, kudos to the entire team for kind of organizing such a nice event here.
Thank you, Vedran. Let's see the questions. We have first one here.
Hi.
Yeah.
Thanks for the presentation. It was very, very good. The question is, do you have someone in your sales team? And if yes, who are these people and how did you come up hiring them? If no, why? And who covers what in your company?
So you asked, do we have somebody on our sales team that does what? That part I didn't hear. Can you repeat?
That does lead generation,
Okay.
that does like the actual sales, like all
So,
the...
of course, usually, not usually, a couple of months ago, we started hiring a more complete sales team, I would say in June of last year. Up until then, it was me and one guy from Croatia. Then we decided that we don't know a lot about sales and how some of these things are done, so we hired a senior go-to-market leader from Postman. That revolutionized the way that we think about sales. But then we started adding a bit more SDRs, and now we're in the phase of adding more BDRs and stuff like that. But yeah, we have one guy who is very, very talented and very good at his job.
Is he in the US?
He spent he's originally from India, but spent the last 10 years in the US.
Thank
And I get the question, yes, if you want to sell in the US, you absolutely need somebody that either knows people there, has worked with people there, or is from the US. One of those three.
Maybe just to add to this question before, if we have more, but how do you close hire from US as a small company from Croatia?
I think a lot of people here talk about the same things, and I've talked about it here as well. Like most people who work in companies, let's say, our competitors, these are relatively big companies where the amount of decision-making power that you have is literally zero. So you can't make a decision on what you're going to do go-to-market-wise or marketing-wise or sales-wise. So a lot of the pain for these individuals, especially if they're very motivated, very hungry, very curious, is they want to be able to do stuff on their own. They don't want to go to me and ask me for every single tiny thing, which is probably the best thing for me because I don't have any answers for them to give. So essentially, that's been a huge motivator for us. And yeah, that guy has 3 times bigger salary than I do, but he's already paid himself off. So it is tough.
It was an outreach.
I think that's a funny story. Like, he originally pinged me, and I thought they were spying on what we're doing, because it was like a Slack channel that I was on with some other founders, and I'm like, what the fuck is this guy doing here, blah, blah, blah. And it turns out he wanted a job, and he was just sniffing. So that process took like 8 months until we said, hey, I really like how you're thinking. We align on the idea. We align on the go-to-market. We align on everything. I'll let you, come for me, tell me how much money, blah, 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 and that's about it. The easiest part was actually, he's not going to work for free, that's for sure. He works for, American salaries, but generally, if you can knock him down a bit more on the salaries front, I think it's worth it.
Do we have any more questions? Then thank you, Vedran.
Thank you. Bye. Enjoy.
We're going to have a small break now until the next session at 12:25. Let me just check. Yes, 12:25. Please be here before. And mind the other